Tennessee emptied the bench against UConn this past weekend. Let's take a look at the stats that matter. Snap counts, blocking grades, coverage grades, pass rushing grades. Who stood out and who passed the grade book? PFF Wednesday right here on Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Wednesday morning, you beautiful people. Shout out everydayers and welcome into Locked On Vols. It is your team every single day. Can't thank you enough for being here, making Locked On Vols your first listen. Of course, this is a production, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. That is your team, Tennessee Volunteers, every single day. As always, our Wednesday show programming. If you're watching on YouTube right now, you see that I have the wrong background behind me here. Let me just go ahead and change that. But you already know it's Wednesday, so we're going to have Josh Ward in segment number 3, Ward Wednesday. But first, in segments 1 and 2, we're going to look at the stats that matter per Pro Football Focus. Couldn't do this podcast today without our friends over at FanDuel. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. All you need to do, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to go ahead and get started today. All right, Pro Football Focus stats that matter. Again, there were so many guys that played in this football game. It's almost impossible to cover everybody, but just some of the notables. Joe Milton led the way with an 88.6 overall grade. That is 1.4 away from being considered elite. Of course, he had a really strong day, hit on some explosive plays, only missed 3 passes. He played 30 snaps. Nobody on the offensive end played over 30 snaps. I think those 35 snaps for Mel Keaton, 38 snaps for Cooper Mace. That's right, Cooper Mace came in and played a little bit with Nico. So no starter on the offensive end played more than 38 snaps. And I think that's really, really important here. And again, I don't, you take it for what it's worth. Pro Football Focus, I don't put a whole lot of stock into the, into the overall grades. I'll take a look at the nitty gritty, the pass blocking grades, the coverage grades, all that type of stuff. But they do have a different grading scale. Elite is 90 to 99. Very good is 80 to 89. Above average starter is 70 to 79. Average starter is 60 to 69. And below average starter is 50 to 59, while less than 50 is considered a backup level player. So that overall grade here for Joe Milton at 88.6, it's really close to being an elite grade. Jalen Wright, 88.1 on 15 snaps. Nico Imaliava, 84.1 on 15 snaps. That's noteworthy. McCallum Castles, 76.2 on 29 snaps. Dylan Sampson played 15 snaps. I thought this was interesting. Excuse me. An opportunity to really rest Jacob Warren. Jacob Warren played 9 snaps in this football game. Just 9 snaps. Good on Tennessee's coaching staff, resting the 6-year guy and making sure his legs are fresh for this stretch coming down here at the end of the season. 34 snaps for Dante Thornton. Again, I mentioned 38 snaps for Cooper Mays, 30 snaps for Gerald Mincy, 15 snaps for Dane Davis. I'm just trying to read some of the notables here. Spraggins had 38 snaps. Crawford had 38 snaps. Addison Nichols played 22 snaps. His overall grade was 56.2, which was not that great, but again, is what it is. Ollie Lane played 30 snaps. Jackson Lampley played 14 snaps. Let's go and take a look at some of the nitty-gritty here. And let's look at the blocking grades. Ollie Lane had the best pass blocking grade at 81.3. Cooper Mays had an 80.8 pass blocking grade. Jeremiah Crawford had a 77.3 pass blocking grade. All the pass blocking grade, really the only horrible ones were down here at the bottom with some of these walk-ons and backups. Some of these 3rd and 4th stringers, to be completely honest with you. That's when the pass blocking grades get really bad. But overall, Jackson Lampley, Javonte Spraggins had a 52.2, which is not fantastic. But, everybody else that matters is in 60 above. Let's go to run blocking grade, shall we? McCallum Castles, and I can believe it too. He had a really good day blocking. 87.2 run blocking grade. It's a really solid grade. Jacob Warren in his 9 reps. In his 9 snaps, he had 6 pass blocking reps and had a 77.4, including that little split zone, getting up to the second layer of that linebacker and springing Jalen Wright on the 83-yard touchdown run on the opening drive, or 82-yard, whatever it was. Oh, Vyson Lang, I didn't mention him earlier. Vyson Lang got 14 snaps. Thought that was big because he might be your center next year. But anyway, the run blocking grades, again, were good. Everybody that matters was over 60, with the exception of Jeremiah Crawford was at 53.3. Ollie Lane was at 51.6. But again, you run for 275 yards. There's not a whole lot of things you're going to be nitpicking here. Let's take a look at the directional passing. So this is Joe Milton. Joe Milton was 2 for 3 on passes 20 yards down the field or greater. 2 for 2 between the numbers, 2 touchdowns, 143 yards. He was 2 for 3 on passes 10 to 19 yards, so intermediates, for 32 yards. Joe Milton within 10 yards, he was 6 for 6 for 72 yards. And behind the line of scrimmage, he was 1 for 1 for 7 yards. Again, Joe Milton had a really good day. He was kept clean on 71.4% of his dropbacks. He was not blitzed 92.9% of the time. So really, they only blitzed him a little over 7% of the time, and his grades are really good. 88% when kept clean, 85% when under pressure, 92% when he wasn't blitzed. Again, Joe Milton had himself a day. Let's look at Nico, shall we? Nico Iamaleava only threw it 8 times, of course, played 2 series, no passes of 20 yards or more down the field, but he was 3 for 3 in the intermediate game. I think that's noteworthy because that's something where Joe Milton has not been as sharp this year. 3 for 3 in the intermediate game for 45 yards. Excuse me. He was 1 for 2 in passes within 10 yards for 28 yards. And he was 1 for 2 behind the line of scrimmage for 11 yards. And of course, that touchdown went to McAllen Castles. It was 19 yards. So it was right on the brink of being a deep pass, because it was 19 yards. Deep passes are 20 yards or more down the field. So again, quarterback play was really, really solid for Tennessee. Really the entire game long. Again, it was just an overall grade. There's not a whole lot to say on the offensive end. Tennessee just really whooped that tail. What about defensively? We'll take a look at Tennessee's defense. All that and more as we continue on right here on Locked On Vols. Do want to tell you about our friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks, proud sponsor of the show, and it's the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports, just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more or less than 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. With basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that include 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, LeBron James plus Travis Kelce at 10.5 combo at 3-pointers made plus receptions. You want to play alongside PrizePicks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each and every week. So even the best part about it, I haven't even mentioned it. If you go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege, use the promo code LockedOnCollege, you're going to get an instant deposit match up to $100 for your first deposit. Meaning if I put in $75, it's my first deposit, PrizePicks going to match me $75. $50, they'll match me $50. Up to $100 on your first deposit. All that and more. It's so much fun over at PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com/LockedOnCollege. PrizePicks.com/LockedOnCollege for an instant deposit match up to $100 in your first deposit. That's PrizePicks.com/LockedOnCollege. We continue on with our Pro Football Focus Stats That Matter show right here on Locked On Vols. We got Ward Wednesday, Josh Ward coming up in segment number 3. We will have a Locked On crossover tomorrow, so really looking forward to that. And we'll talk with Locked On Mizzou and really figure out who is Missouri this year and what has made Missouri so effective. Look at the Pro Football Focus overall grades and snap counts. Tyler Barron, number 2 on the list on players that actually played in this football game. 26 snap count, 80% overall was his grade. Jalen McCullough, 40 snaps, 76.9% was his grade. Andre Turrentine, 76.2%. That was good. He played 34 snaps. James Pierce, 24 snaps, 76%. Gabe Judy-Lally, 33 snaps, 72%. Tamari McDonald, 25 snaps, 71%. Aaron Beasley, 39 snaps, 69%. So, really, if you're a starter on this football team, you didn't play more than, I think 40 was the cutoff. Wesley Walker played 46 snaps. Wesley Walker played 46 snaps. Jalen McCullough played 40 snaps, and those two guys, obviously safeties, were the highest snap getters of the starters. Now, Jordan Thomas played a lot of football. Jordan Thomas played 48 snaps. He played a lot of star, even with the starters in this football game, and well into the second half when the reserves were in. So that was really cool to see. Jordan Thomas, the guy that's going to play a lot of football, in my opinion, for Tennessee next year. Let's look at the missed tackles. Tennessee missed tackles in this football game, 13. 3 from Tyree West, 2 from Jeremiah Telander, 2 for Wesley Walker, 2 from Aaron Beasley, 1 from Caleb Perry, 2 from Gabe Judy-Lawley, 1 from Andre Turrentine, and that brings you to 13. Overall, I thought Tennessee tackled pretty well, especially on the perimeter. I thought Ricky Gibson, I thought Gabe Judy-Lawley, I thought Danico Slaughter. I thought all those guys really tackled well. In fact, let's look at those tackling grades. Danico Slaughter was at 79.3 with his tackling grade, which is 0.7 away. 0.7 away from being considered very, very good. Ricky Gibson, his tackling grade was 79.3. So again, really, really good. Jordan Thomas's tackling grade was 83.3. I thought he was really solid. Gabe Judy-Lawley. See, again, this is why I don't quite, you can take it as a basis, but you can't just run with it like it's gospel. Gabe Judy-Lawley's tackling grade was 15.4. Sure, they have him down for 2 missed tackles, but he literally secured the tackle, stripped the football that led to a defensive touchdown. It was all him. It was literally all him. So I'm not sure why Gabe Judy-Lawley's tackling grade sits at 15.4. I don't quite understand that, but alas, it's not my thing to grade. So again, a lot of these things that kind of stood out to me during the football game kind of reflect that in these grades. Thought Elijah Simmons played really well. His overall grade is 67.9. Reflects that. Let's find Karad Garland. Thought Karad Garland played one of his better football games. Let's see here. So many guys played on the defensive end. Here's Karad Garland. Overall grade of 57.6. Okay. Again, Pro Football Focus doesn't know individual assignments. Doesn't know which gap they're supposed to hold, so it's kind of hard to grade that. But Karad Garland's played 34 snaps. I'd say that's probably a career high for him, to be honest with you. Some newcomers made their Tennessee debuts. Trevor Duncan, he played in his first Tennessee football game, and some other guys. So let's take a look at pass rush and who kind of stood out in that regard. Tennessee did not have but 1 sack on the day. And, of course, that was by way of an intentional grounding. So, really, they didn't even have a sack. Did have 13 TFLs, so I think that's important. James Pierce Jr. was credited with 3 hurries. James Pierce Jr. was credited with 3 hurries. Tyler Barron was credited with 3 hurries. Aaron Beasley, Omar Norman Lott, Jordan Thomas, Joshua Josephs, all were credited with 1 hurry, and then Tyree West actually credited with 2 hurries. Quarterback hits. Joshua Josephs had a hit on the quarterback. Jordan Thomas had a hit on the quarterback. Jeremiah Telander had a hit on the quarterback. And Karad Garland had a hit on the quarterback. So again, Tennessee never got home. Was applying some pressure, but Tennessee will need to get home against Brady Cook this week for sure, and also force him into some bad decisions. Rush defense, who was the best against the run? Tamari McDonald had the highest grade at 77.6. Tyler Barron was up there. Aaron Beasley, Andre Turrentine, Jason Jenkins, who played 6 snaps. Good for him. Jeremiah Telander, Omar Norman Law, Jordan Thomas. All those guys were in the 70s, which is really good. Really good. It's considered above average starter. Elijah Simmons, Jalen McCullough, James Pierce Jr., Ricky Gibson, Brandon Turnage, Roman Harrison. Jalen Smith got a lot of action the other day. That's good to see. All those guys scored in the 60s. So those guys were best against the run. Let's look at pass defense. Let's actually look at coverage, shall we? All right, this is what we like to see a lot of the coverage snaps. Caleb Perry, who played a lot more because Aaron Carter didn't play in that football game, and of course he's in a 3rd down package. Caleb Perry was targeted 3 times through the air, gave up 2 receptions for 5 yards. And again, the defense didn't allow a touchdown on the day, so nobody allowed a passing touchdown. Jalen McCullough targeted twice, gave up no receptions. Gabe Judy-Lawley targeted 4 times, gave up 2 receptions for 33 yards. Warren Burrell targeted 3 times, gave up no receptions. Ricky Gibson targeted 6 times, gave up 2 receptions for only 6 yards. Again, I thought he played really well. Jordan Thomas targeted 3 times, gave up 2 receptions for 5 yards. Tamari McDonald targeted once, gave up a catch for 7 yards. Danico Slaughter, this is not what you want to see, targeted 5 times, gave up 5 receptions for 47 yards. Again, some of those, especially the one that was the big chunk play, the long of 18 yards or whatever, I mean, where was the safety help over the top? They were playing zone coverage, and Jalen McCullough or Wesley Walker won really slow over the top to help on that flag route. And so, again, Pro Football Focus doesn't know that. They just see the number trailing the receiver and just assume that that was this guy. But anyway, Danico Slaughter, 5 targets, gave up 5 receptions for 47 yards. Anybody else that matter? Oh, this one's not good. Elijah Herring in the middle of the field. Again, linebackers go a bit picked on because they're in the area most. Targeted 6 times, gave up 6 receptions for 59 yards was Elijah Herring. Wesley Walker targeted twice, gave up 1 reception for 31 yards. And Jeremiah T. Lander, another linebacker, targeted 4 times, gave up 3 receptions for 23 yards. Anyway, you want to spin it. Again, it's kind of tough going back and looking at the Pro Football Focus grades because Tennessee just beat the crap out of UConn as it was supposed to do. Complete domination. Tennessee over UConn, and that's what it was. We will officially look forward to Missouri, starting with a Locked On crossover edition tomorrow, and, of course, my official preview Friday. And we'll get Boogie Bentley on as well. Plus, we'll ask Josh Ward about Missouri. A little bit about some of these young guys that play in this UConn game, about the SEC overall, a little hoops talk as well. Plus, a really fun question to end the show. And I want you to think about it. We can actually talk about this, make it a segment, make it a show if we want to later on. But it's a really good question that's coming up next in my conversation with Josh Ward for a little Ward Wednesday right here on Locked On Vols. Do want to tell you about our friends FanDuel. FanDuel, it's America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. You've been thinking about joining FanDuel. There's no better time to get in on that action than right now with college football season, the NFL, and now basketball season's here. The NBA has been going on for a little while. College basketball season has started. Tennessee, a couple of nights ago, took care of Tennessee Tech. We'll be on the road at Wisconsin this weekend, and there will be totals, money line, and, of course, player props for that Tennessee basketball game, as well as Tennessee football, Missouri, all that and more. It's at FanDuel.com. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season today. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. As we do each and every week, we conclude our Wednesday show by checking in with Josh Ward of 99.1 The Sports Animal, co-host of Josh and Swain with VFL Jason Swain, as we call this little bit Award Wednesday. Josh, Tennessee did exactly what it was supposed to do. It got in, it took care of business, it got out, it looked good doing it. 59-3 over UConn.
Yeah, Tennessee did everything that we kind of demand in those kinds of games. And by the way, when teams come out and they don't play well in those games and it looks like they're overlooking the opponent, sometimes I will be understandable because I often overlook that kind of game. We didn't talk much about the UConn game itself. We talked about how Tennessee could use the game last week on our radio show, but the Vols did that. The offense came out and made it look really easy, and that allowed backups to get in, including Nico, which fans wanted to see in the second half, and I know some wanted to see more of him. That's perfectly fine, but it was easy. Tennessee cruised against UConn as it was supposed to get ready for more important things, starting with Missouri.
When you look at this Missouri game, well, I guess we'll tie a bow on the UConn game. Again, there's not much talking leading up to it, not a whole lot of talk leaving it. It just kind of is what it is. 3 defensive touchdowns. Offensively, the explosive plays were back. And then you mentioned Nico got in there and had 2 drives, and he looked really good doing it. What were your which one was more impressive, the explosive plays, the defensive touchdowns, or Nico's performance?
Well, I would probably say the defensive touchdowns. To have 3 in a game and make some history for the program, which has a ton of history, I think says something. Jalen Wright just being able to bust through and run more than 80 yards for a touchdown is really impressive. Swain gave me a hard time because we talked about impressive individual plays, and he went with Tyler Barron's touchdown. It was a great play with Gabe Judy-Lally, and then Barron with the return. And that was going to be my answer. So I went with Ramel Keaton's touchdown because it was so easy, because they fooled the defensive back. Like, he'll never have an easier catch, including in warmups in Neyland Stadium, because in warmups you have players all over the place. Nobody was nearby. So that to me was what made it impressive. But the defensive side just completely dominating as it was expected to. Nico was impressive, though, and I get that fans wanted to see more. I will add in this. I brought this up on the show Friday before the UConn game because we fully expected Nico would play. But, Eric, I shared this opinion. Fans wanting to see Nico, totally understandable. Nobody needs to explain why. But often when we talk about the conversation of a young quarterback especially, or just even young players, but for this case, Nico, getting the experience to help him in the future, I don't think his 2 series against UConn will have any kind of effect on what kind of quarterback he is in the future. We used to see players redshirt not being allowed to play, and then they would go on and be incredible football players. A little more than a decade ago, we started to see redshirt freshmen go win Heisman trophies, having not played the year before. What Nico sees in practice is a bigger challenge than what he faced against UConn. So I had to get that off my chest a little bit last week. We've seen guys get experience early and then do nothing in their careers. We've seen quarterbacks not get to play their first year or two and then turn out to be stars. I think Nico is going to be a very good player at Tennessee, but not because he was able to get 2 series, and he wouldn't be a better player if he had played a 3rd series on Saturday.
And I'm on the flip side saying in a 59-3 blowout win, Nico only got 2 series. I mean, what's going on there? But again, I recognize
which is perfectly fine, because I understand fans wanting to see the guy that's a 5-star, highly touted player that has all this ability. And if you wanted to see more of him, you don't have to explain yourself there. We were kind of joking on Monday that, man, the defense must not like Nico because they kept scoring and keeping the offense from being able to hit the field. But if he had gotten a 3rd series, it would have no effect on his development as a player next season.
Look ahead to Tennessee and Missouri, monster game. Missouri's pretty good on paper, really solid offense, defense, gets after the quarterbacks, got a cornerback that's an NFL prospect doing a really good job. Overall, top to bottom, Eli Drinkwitz did a great job with this group. 7-2, 3-2 in SEC play. Tennessee and Missouri playing to see who's at number 2 in the SEC. And, of course, depending on what happens with Georgia, maybe even playing for a spot in Atlanta the following week. Got to take care of business. Your overall thoughts on Missouri Tigers this year?
Yeah, Drinkwitz has improved the team and the program over the last couple of years. Think about that matchup 2 years ago. That Missouri defense was awful. That game against Tennessee made it look like Missouri hadn't practiced for a second leading up to that game. It was a weird circumstance. They had a defensive coordinator who's very respected, Steve Wilkes. He's the defense coordinator right now for the 49ers. He's been a head coach in the NFL, but that didn't work 2 years ago. Last year they were improved, and the score is very lopsided, but in the middle of that game, it was not as one-sided. Tennessee pulled away as the second half went along. This year should be closer. The odds makers think that it's going to be closer, and I think that's because their personnel is better. They've improved on both sides of the ball. And Brady Cook, who went into the season having to win the starting job again, not only won it, but took off from there. And Tennessee's defense will have to do a good job of not only pressuring, but containing Cook because he can make plays with his legs. And they have receivers that will probably see what Kentucky did against Tennessee and say, we can do that and more against Tennessee's defense. So I think the Vols are the better team going in, and the line quickly shifted toward Tennessee, but not in a massive way. So the Vols have to be ready for this one. It's a road game, which matters, and one win against Kentucky boosts the confidence of how Tennessee will play on the road, but it doesn't tell us everything. Missouri, I think, will be fired up to get a win against Tennessee for the first time in a few years.
Heading up to the zoo. It's going to get wild up there at the zoo. I mean, we made jokes. It's kind of not saying that they have a great home field atmosphere. They might do. In 2021, they did, and it was me, you, and a couple of our friends who were at that ballpark, at that stadium. But it's hard to make fun of that preseason video now when your team's 7-2. But heading to the zoo. All right.
Maybe the rules and the guidelines they put out for their fans worked as much as they got mocked before the season began.
They worked, yeah. Georgia Ole Miss. How do you see that playing out this weekend?
I like Georgia. Night game in Athens at home. I mean, Lane's offense, I think, will go out there and challenge them, and I wouldn't be surprised if in the middle of the game at halftime we're talking about can Ole Miss do something here? But I just keep coming back to Georgia being as good as it is, and knowing it has an opportunity to wrap up the East, so it can wrap up an SEC title game appearance, which will put them in a position to go back to another college football playoff. I have a lot of respect for what Lane has done at Ole Miss. That is a program where he doesn't have all the resources that the big teams do, and he might go in there and challenge Georgia even better than I expect and pull off an upset. Maybe that happens, and Tennessee obviously needs it. But I look at the last couple of weeks, or really overall this season, the Kentucky game. There was some talk of, hey, could the Wildcats challenge this Georgia team? They haven't shined yet the way they did the last 2 years. And then Georgia said, watch this. And then for the Florida game, Georgia didn't have Brock Bowers. And for 2 weeks, the question was, how are they going to respond without their best player? And their answer was, we're going to respond with all our other big-time players. Watch this. And then as the game went along, kind of a similar response against Missouri. But, Ole Miss has a shot here. We'll see. Night game in Athens with Georgia having the chance to do what it can, and I think Georgia will take care of business.
Out the door, a nod to our buddies Tyler and Will. I want you to start bench cut these 3 options. The topic is best program on campus right now. You can define that how you want to. Healthiest, wins, losses, recruiting, whatever you want. Best program on campus right now. Men's basketball, football, or baseball.
So the basketball team looks like it could be really good this year.
Final four.
A lot of people think that even outside Knoxville, which might be frightening to Tennessee fans. So
it should be because it's the month of November, so carry on.
Yeah. Rick's done it longer at Tennessee than Tony Vitello has, although he's already made it to the College World Series. This is right now you're asking me, correct?
Yes.
I will start Tennessee basketball. I will bench Tennessee baseball, and I'll cut football, which is in terrific shape, having won 11 games last season and gone back-to-back at least 6 wins before November for the first time in close to 20 years. So that, to me, is more of a huge statement and praise for the athletic department overall. Feel free to disagree with me, but I would go basketball, baseball, football.
It's funny. My buddy Osborne, he brought this up to me earlier, this week, and I think my answer was, if I was ranking them, he didn't ask me start bench cut, but I was ranking. I think my answer was men's basketball, baseball, then football at the time. Football is the number 3, and that's just crazy to think at how great of shape it's in. Mm-hmm. But I think right now I've talked myself into, you got to go baseball. I understand Rick Barnes has got that program at an elite level, recruiting Tennessee basketball, and never recruit where it is now. He's a Hall of Fame coach and like 7 different things. But Tony Vitello has gone to the World Series twice in 3 years. I mean, that's essentially that's the Elite 8, right? Rick Barnes not taking Tennessee to Elite 8.
Yeah, and here's another argument against my order that I went with. So if I were to try to pick apart my own choice, basketball is in terrific shape, and I went more of a national thought, but also Tennessee has picked to win the SEC this year. SEC basketball has improved over the years. It's not at the depth of baseball, which is probably the strongest, honestly, in these 3 sports, or football. So the route to SEC success is easier for basketball compared to baseball or football. So the quality of program that Tennessee basketball has been for so long, I went kind of longevity with Rick Barnes, which is kind of funny to think. I mean, he's been at Tennessee for a long time, longer than Bruce Pearl was at Tennessee. But if you go baseball, I don't think you can go football at the top yet. Unless you are weighting it by importance. Obviously, football is most important for the athletic department, but it was between basketball and baseball, obviously, since those are my top 2. And if you say baseball based on World Series success, and they're going to be, preseason top 5, a little better than me, definitely preseason top 10.
Yeah, they'll be preseason top 10.
Yeah, then, they're right there in line, or maybe a little better than men's basketball, but the state of this team and the program is really impressive, but they're all in great shape right now. The
recruiting by Rick Barnes and Tony Vitello far and away superior to football right now, even though football's got some pretty good hauls here. I mean, number 1 player in the country, Nico. But and then you factor in some of these baseball players don't even make it to campus. It's even more mind-blowing. Anyway, feel free. I know it's not the offseason, but goodness gracious, make that a 5-burning question or face-off question, or make that your segment C on a slow day. I mean, that's It's a good conversation, and you're welcome to my friend Matthew Osborne. All right, Josh, what's coming up the rest of the week, man? We got a big game coming up on Saturday, Tennessee and Missouri, and you guys have it all covered and previewed and talked about over on Josh and Swain.
Yeah, every day on the radio, 12 to 3 live. You can go back and podcast the show anywhere you get podcasts. Just search Josh and Swain. So most of the conversation is Tennessee football, the Missouri game mattering so much. Some basketball, though, with the Wisconsin game. That's a big one on the road for the Vols this Friday. We also have the Josh and Swain newsletter. It's free once a week, every Friday morning. So recommend you subscribe to that.
Yep, you can subscribe to that by hitting the link in the show notes here on this episode. Plus, you guys have Cover Tuesday with a VFL, right?
Yeah, Cover Tuesday. It's Tuesdays at 1 o'clock with former Tennessee and NFL cornerback Jonathan Wade, who is a passionate Tennessee fan now. He's Coach Wade, so he looks at the game through a coach's eyes with the memories of being a player all SEC at Tennessee.
He is Josh Ward. Give him a follow on Twitter at Josh_Ward. Josh, as always, buddy, appreciate you.
Thanks, Eric.
All right, and that's going to do it here for this edition of Locked On Vols. Can't thank you enough for being here. Shout out everydayers. We'll come back. We'll cross it over with Locked On Mizzou, Tennessee versus Mizzou. It's getting closer, guys, and we'll preview it all, every single angle right here on Locked On Vols. Thanks so much, and we'll talk again tomorrow.